Hello. Today I will be featuring one of the upcoming Japanese DDs, the Akizuki, which will be the new Tier 8 gunboat Japanese DD. Now, one of the first things I want to show you is, of course, the massive weakness of this ship. I like to start out with this and then I'll move on to the actual strengths of it. You can see the fact I used HE, I shot straight at the Benson, he bounced all the shells, I switched to AP, I shot right at him, he's still bouncing all my shells. It doesn't matter if I'm shooting superstructure or if I'm shooting the front. If you shoot right from the front, they're gonna bounce it. HE, well, they're bouncing it if you hit the hull. You actually have to hit the superstructure on a DD with this HE to do any damage. So the HE, to put it lightly, is absolute garbage. The HE is a complete joke. However, the AP is very good and does very consistent damage on DDs. In fact, you tend to quite rarely overpen, as you can see, 15 normal penetrations. So surprisingly, HE example again, you see how the damage dropped to nothing. Absolute zero damage. Only if I hit the superstructure do I get any damage. And it doesn't matter how close you are, even point blank, the HE does zero damage. And this is on a Benson. The higher tier they get, the harder it of course gets. Once again, AP though, consistent, good damage. So this is a bit of a weird thing on this DD, and kind of how it's kind of one of those DDs where you use AP against other DDs, which is quite strange. Of course, long range and close range, the AP is very consistent in dealing damage. So that's certainly a good thing. Let me show you an example on the angling I was talking about. Right, so let's move up a bit closer to these. I have a Kagero and a Tashkent here. Shooting at the angle Kagero, at this angle, easy damage. At this angle, on the Tashkent, very easy damage as well. Very consistent, in fact. So far, so good fighting other DDs. This is the same on the T8 ones, I just use this as an example though. But you see what happens as soon as we put some angle into it. My AP damage drops to zero. Not just low, but it drops to zero. Even aiming at the superstructure, I need to get lucky overpens on something to do any damage. Switching to HE, now we can do some damage, but not shooting the hull, of course. Hull is once again zero, but we have to hit the turret and the superstructure and we do damage again. But it's not very high, and it's not very consistent, and it's a much harder target to hit, especially if it's an avoiding guy who's like rushing towards you. And the damage quickly drops down very harshly. Switching to AP again, we rely on that lucky pen somewhere. So the damage, very limited, regardless of ammo type, if the DD is angled. Of course, this is worse against cruisers and such, but considering you're fighting DDs a lot in this ship, I thought this needed to be highlighted before I started my commentary, because this is certainly a major weakness of this ship, and something that needs to be taken into account when playing against this ship. Now, let's move up to the actual commentary, or the actual gameplay, not just against bots, that is. Looking at the ship itself, I mean, it's pretty obvious what kind of ship it is when you see all the guns. The turret setup is, well, it's pretty much the Habarovsk turret setup. It's this weird map, what is it called? Shards, I think it's called? Shards. Regardless, it doesn't matter too much which map it is, because I feel like this ship has a lot of potential on a lot of different maps. If it's close quarters, well, you don't really mind brawling other DDs at all. And if it's open, wide areas, well, then you'll just be stealth firing all day. Of course, there can be some issues with DDs who constantly avoid you and turn away, especially since I did show you guys what happens when you try to use AP on an angled target. So if you face an enemy DD that really refuses to fight you, and basically every time you open fire on him, he'll turn away, show you his stern, and just use his back guns, especially if it's an IJN DD that has two turrets in the back and is fairly accurate with those, it's probably going to be very frustrating. I haven't really experienced it yet, because I tend to melt them before they have time to turn away, but someone who reacts, a good player who will react like really quickly and not let himself be melted, I think it's going to be rough. But most of the times, any encounters with IJN DDs I've had have been very one-sided, as soon as I of course figured out, well, I gotta use AP. We have a full HP Fubuki here, he's got 13k HP, and you can see the damage. I mean, yes, there's a few overpens here and there, but the overpens really aren't that big of a deal, because the overall DPM is still very consistent and very good, I would say. Not sick or insane, not the gearing, but it's very consistent and I consider it's good. Of course, as long as they don't angle. So when it comes to fighting other DDs, as long as it gets broadside, it packs a mean punch, a real mean punch. The HE, on the other hand, is pitiful. So far, the only reason I found to use, well, in general, I've been using a bit of a weird tactic, honestly, fighting enemy battleships. I use HE, I spam them until I get 1 or 2 fires, and then I switch over to AP, and because that does significantly more damage. Yes, the fire chance is only 5%, and it's honestly something that made me consider maybe get AFD and both DE just to get that up to 8%, but ultimately the HE does so little damage that I don't really feel like buffing it. He repaired the first fire, as battleships tend to do. I smoke up, so now I'm gonna try to get a second fire. Usually I wouldn't bother with the second fire too much, but since this guy literally used his damage con on one fire, which battleships tend to do quite often, even though I of course always advise against it, it's very common. Someone else got the second fire, that's when I decided, okay, no longer worth it. I'm not gonna go hunting for those bow and stern fires, just straight to AP now. AP on this ship, unlike Royal Navy cruisers or Russian DDs that are a lot more forgiving of where you hit, like you can hit about the deck, you can hit kinda on the top of the belt and so forth, and you still get pens. These 100mm shells are very picky. You have to hit the superstructure. You see how much my damage varies. I go from doing 0 damage a volley to suddenly I can have 3k volleys. It's very, very picky. You need to hit that superstructure. The higher tier the ship, the more important it is. Of course, there are exceptions where it's... Of course, the bigger the superstructure, the easier time you will have. Like, German battleships are fantastic because of all that superstructure. If you happen to face up against lower tier, like tier 7, tier 6 American ones, like New Mexico and Colorado, they have so much lovely superstructure. You can just spam with AP, and that's of course fantastic. Did this Nagata call it quits? I think this Nagata might have rage quit. Honestly, did he really rage quit? I'm getting the feel that this guy got pretty goddamn mad because of those fires and he just exited straight to port. I mean, of course, it's possible it was just... it's possible it was just a DC, but yeah, it's... I mean, not being HE spam when you can't see who you're shooting. Hey, I thought VG didn't really want this stuff. I mean, they thought this was one of the reasons why they kind of got rid of the whole Royal Navy HE, but they're kind of reinvigorating it with this Akizuki. Of course, AP is significantly stronger, but still, this certainly has that HE spam potential. Of course, if you get a 15-point captain like I do, then you can get Concealment Expert, which lowers your stealth firing range to 8.9, which is pretty disgusting, and especially with this rate of fire. But you can see, of course, the damage. As you see, I'm shooting Colorado. Damage is pitiful. I'm just trying to get that one fire, and I'll go straight to AP. I got that one fire. My torps, hardly looking organized now. Looking pretty decent. Probably gonna hit 1 or 2. And time to go. He damaged con that one fire, so I'm just gonna spam some AP on him now. And you see the difference. You saw those 0 damage volleys, and now when we have a ship with a lot of superstructure like the Colorado, well, now we can deal a lot of damage. Or well, a lot and a lot. Like it's not a lot per volley, but it tends to add up, especially since you're constantly firing. In fact, you're gonna be surprised at just how many shells I have fired by the time this game has ended. His damage con has probably run out now, so now I'm gonna see if I can get a fire going as well. There we go. Is it worth going for a second one? I'm gonna spam a few more volleys to see. Maybe I could get that second fire ticking. But the damage is very pitiful. Not having too much luck getting that second fire. More consistent damage, honestly, just going to AP. Of course, in a team, forcing the battleships to use, or in a division, forcing the battleships to use damage con is of course going to be a pretty big advantage, especially if you happen to division up with some other type of damage dealer, or, well, if you division up with another DD, for example, a torpedo boat DD, and he happens to get flooding on someone, and then you spam that HE, it's going to be, of course, a very frustrating combination, or any cruiser or anything is going to appreciate the help that you cause. Here I'm showing off, of course, the rapid reload on the Torpedoes. Normally, this ship, of course, only has one torpedo launcher. It has one X4, which is quite weak. But when you use the consumable, the rapid reload, it reduces the cooldown of that reload from what is it, 1 minute 45 or something. It reduces it to 5 seconds, which means you can basically launch 8 torpedoes instead of the stock 4. But that's limited to once every 4 minutes when you have that consumable up. The rest of the time, well, you're gonna have to deal with just one torp launcher. The torps are quite good, they're good range, good damage, all that, but it's still only 4. So yeah, you're not gonna be using the ship as a torpedo boat. You shouldn't expect to use it as a torpedo boat. Usually that consumable is mostly for those oh shit moments, or when you feel like, hey, maybe I might be able to land a torp or two. But not very reliable, and in general you should rely on getting most of your damage out of your guns. I tried some torpedo builds on the ship, I tried some HP builds, but ultimately by far the best build is just going full focus on the guns. Which is a bit strange considering this is really the only gunboat of all the new Japanese DDs. No other ship is really a gunboat, they're all variations of torpedo boats. In fact, the ship that's just before this, the Shiratsuyu, I'm sorry if I'm completely messing up the pronunciation on that, the Shiratsuyu or something like that, the T7 one, that's like as torpedo boat as you can get. It has barely any gun power, it's all about the torps, all about that pure torpedo damage with the rapid reload as well. So it's kind of weird, because if you really want to get the most out of this Akizuki, having a special captain for this ship alone is pretty much a must-have. However, if you do have this extra captain, then this ship is pretty damn fun. It's a different type of gunboat, but it's a pretty damn fun gunboat. And it has a lot of potential, a lot of damage potential, and in general it can be a real terror. Of course, you can also get the concealment low enough to actually be competitive, which is a bit of a difference. Whoa, what's this? Oh, Mutsuki. Close enough to spot me. And he's not angling away. Is he torping me? No, he's shooting back. Well, he shouldn't bother with that, because, well, when you get broadside hits on other DDs, you really melt them quickly. And they don't. And honestly, the shells are so fast, the arcs are so good. Anyone who's used to using guns on like US DDs is gonna have such an easy time landing shells on this ship. Like, I have no issues landing consistent volleys on other DDs with these guns, and I just melt people very, very easily. Oh, Ayoban. Of course, if you happen to get close quarters with a cruiser, that's not the end of the world, because once again, AP does a lot of damage, even against cruisers. In fact, I'm getting a lot of Urpens. I think I should aim lower. 10 Urpens already. I probably need to aim lower. Only 3 shells shattered, so Ayoba obviously has thin enough armor that very easy to just pierce right through the hull. Surprising, considering how much it's strange how much the HE struggles, but then the APs pens all these surprising things that I don't expect it to pen. 5.9 concealment, of course, not quite up. I think Benson gets, is it 5.8? I think Benson and Loyang are both 5.8. And then of course Fubuki with 15-point captain is like 5.5, 5.4. So very competitive. Is it going to be used in ranked? I mean, it's probably going to be used. Is it going to be good? It has potential. I mean, biggest issue it has, of course, is these very, very rapid firing guns. Use them in smoke and everyone's going to be torping and shooting into that smoke. But it does have a lot of HP. I mean, 20k HP without using the HP perk is no joke. If you guys didn't notice it, that is a very tanky DD. Considering the Benson, when you use the HP perk, has 18.6k. And I think Fubuki with the HP perk has like 17k or something. So having 20k HP is certainly no joke. So it's gonna be, in fact, the one ship that it's gonna or should mostly replace is the Tashkent, because I see very little reason to use the Tashkent when this ship is in the game. Like, why would you ever play a Tashkent over this ship? I mean, the Tashkent has absolutely garbage concealment. It handles much worse. It has more torps, I guess, but overall the stealth firing capabilities are much better, and you can contest caps, which you can't do with the Tashkent. And overall, the one thing that I expect this ship, if it's going to replace anything, it's going to be replacing the Tashkent by far, if the next season is of ranked this T8 as well. How competitive it is remains to be seen, because once again, the better the player gets, the more he will learn the need of angling, and once you start angling, well, you saw what happened to my damage. I showed it on the bots. It doesn't matter if you're using AP or HE. I got my one fire, which is exactly what I wanted. Let's launch one torp at the Bismarck. Oh, I used my consumable. I wanted to shoot the Colorado, but the Colorado is actually turning in and turning away. That's such an awkward one. Honestly, I don't even want to waste my torps on this guy. I'm just gonna go AP. At this close range, I should be able to show just how strong the AP is on battleships with a lot of superstructure. That's like 3k volley followed by 2k volley by another 2k volley. Just very, very consistent damage. It's probably fairly saturated on the top as well. But it's a lot of damage, and it's pretty consistent, as long as they give you that broadside. Honestly, the one ship that it very much reminds me of is the Minotaur. Like, it's like a mini T8 Minotaur, considering, well, except that it has HE, but the HE is so garbage that questionable. The torps, of course, are 10 km, which you can see by the fact that the Bismarck that far away had to evade them. I should have probably launched my second volley in the same spot. I might have been able to get a hit. I don't know. He was turning away anyway, so it felt like a waste of time. The game looks like this is the two guys left. There's the shores down south, and this Bismarck is fleeing. I never quite understood ships that flee when the game is about to be lost, considering the repair cost has been changed a long time ago, so you're not actually saving money by running away, you're just earning less. The cost is going to be the same regardless, so I never really understood the logic of fleeing, like you're wasting money. Well, whatever. So I guess people still haven't got the memo that the service costs have been changed. I wonder how long it will take for people to get that memo. Probably a bit too long. The AA, of course, is fairly good. You saw me shoot down that plane. Didn't take too long. The thing is, it's got really long range, but it honestly doesn't have too much damage on it. It's better than the IJN normal AA for sure, but I mean, it's not worth speccing into it. It simply isn't that strong. It's not worth going any hi-ho full strength on it. Am I really not gonna get a fire? This is the issue with 5% fire chance. It's very RNG based. Finally a fire. Now I can switch to AP. Probably should have switched to AP a lot sooner. I just got stuck with wanting that one fire, and I didn't even have time to tick for any damage. That was a bit of a waste of time. But ultimately though, 180k damage, and let's team score. 5 kills, no Kraken of course, since, or no Confederate, no high caliber, none of that, since it's a test ship, so I don't get any of those rewards or flags. Boo-hoo, VG please fix. You can see my fire damage. I almost got Witherer, very close. I think getting Witherer is probably fairly easy on this ship. And of course, worth mentioning, 867 target hits. That is a pretty ridiculous number of shells fired and shot, so definitively not to be underestimated. XP wise, not bad. Anyway, let's move on to the modules. Alright, moving on to my recommended build on the Akizuki. Well, first of all, you should get the range upgrade. The default range is only 9.2, which even if you have the expert concealment captain, it's still not going to be quite enough. It's going to be harsh. Get the range, then get the hull. The hull gives a bit of AA, a bit of rudder shift, but the most important thing really with the hull is that it gives a huge chunk of HP. You get 4.5k HP out of the hull, which is basically a third additional HP on top of what you already have. Once you have that, you can get the Torpedoes, which is a bit of speed, a bit of damage at the cost of some reload, which is worth it, considering how rarely you actually use them. Consumer-wise, I always recommend the premium smoke gen and maybe the premium torpedo reload as well. I use everything, of course, because I got the money. Main armaments, aiming mods, system 1, very simple. The AA, as I said, the numbers aren't that impressive, so it's not really worth buffing the range on them even more. Propulsion, because losing engine is pretty much the worst. Rudder shift, because, well, I like getting down to that 3.7, especially since you knife fight a lot of other DDs. The turning circle isn't that good, so getting that thing down is nice. Lastly, of course, stealth module. Captain perks, basic firing training, last stand, vigilance, Once again, fighting a lot of DDs, I like having vigilance when dealing with them, especially since I'm the king of eating random torps. Advanced firing training, I've tried both tanky build and I tried demo expert. AFT is in my opinion the best because the H is so garbage. Concealment expert, and finally expert marksman with my 17th point, or 16th and 17th. There's some argument that you could take torpedo reload as well, but I like the far snappier, quicker turning turrets because even with the torpedo reload, you don't really get that much out of the torps because, well, they're available so rarely. Anyway, that was my Akizuki commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.